All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to this month's No BS Mindset webinar, and we're going to be covering something that when I learned and utilized in my life consistently, gave me a way to free myself from past shit. Basically, to free myself from past shit. Because, when we look at our life experiences, the things that trigger us and program us the most are traumatic experiences. And if you had any kind of traumatic experience in the past, I promise you there's a belief in there that was programmed in during that time, because that's how programs are installed into the unconscious. They fuse to the unconscious through these intense emotional experiences. And if we don't do anything about them, they're going to continue to repattern certain situations and experiences over and over and over again. So timeline is the theme and the name of the game this month for our monthly webinar. And so I'm going to be sharing my screen with you here in a moment, and we're going to be going through just a few slides and then a few tools that you can use in your life as it relates to timeline, and then we'll wrap up. So we'll go about 30 minutes, and then if there's any questions at the end of that 30 minutes, I'll open the lines up to questions, okay? So if you do have questions, type your questions in the chat box, and I'll make sure and address them, okay? So let me share my screen real quick. All right, so hopefully you can still see me. You can see the screen. Okay, so welcome to the No Bullshit Mindset monthly webinar. And by the way, this is totally complimentary. And one thing that we're proud of is that there's a lot of webinars out there. We get it. There's a lot of information being shared out there on the internet. And in the day of information and the day of technology explosion and the day of the internet, we know that just in my work in studying peak performance and productivity, there is an overwhelming amount of information coming at us, and that overwhelm creates stress. And anytime there's stress that gets created from overwhelm, we tend to disengage from what's most important. And so, we wanted to do a webinar that was short, 30 minutes with a little bit of Q&A at the end, without any fluff, and also with no pitch. So we're not gonna ask you to buy anything on this webinar. We'll give away stuff on this webinar at the end. So make sure you stay and hang in tight, and we'll always offer a resource or two at the end that you can continue to tap into NLP at a deeper level if you want to. The mission of the No Bullshit monthly webinar series, or the No Bullshit Mindset online training series, is to challenge and empower people to let go of the bullshit excuses, stories, and justifications that keep them from going after and achieving life-fulfilling goals. That's the primary focus of what we're doing. And, one of the reasons why I developed this online training series is because my theme for the year is generosity. And so I'm always, now that that's my theme, generosity and creativity, I'm always filtering for ways of how can I give more away? How can it be more generous? Because, we've heard it a lot. Tony Robbins has that famous quote that says that the secret to living is giving. And we see these inspirational quotes, and I decided that this year I'm really going to turn generosity up. I mean, I've been pretty generous in the past, but I decided this year I really want to turn it up. And there's a lot of research out there also that says when you give unconditionally, it increases happiness and it increases your mood. And that's definitely true. So if you're looking for a hack, a quick way to feel good, quick way to get aligned, find a way to give something away. Your time, your energy, your love, your effort, your money, whatever it is that you want to give away. Find a way to give it away unconditionally. And I'm noticing a lot of just internal amplifications of joy, of peace, of love in my own life by, making generosity one of the leading themes that I run with in 2019. So anyway, here we go. NLP timeline. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And I was introduced to NLP in 2006 at this point, through Tony Robbins, because so much of his work is the foundation of it is NLP. He trained with the two dudes who originated NLP back in like the 1970s. And when Tony got a hold of this model of work, it just exploded everything that he was doing, because his early mentor was Jim Rohn. And if you don't know Jim Rohn, Google him. He's probably one of the godfathers of personal development. And, he was like, Tony Robbins was his sort of like his protege. And, he combined the philosophical magic and mindset of Jim Rohn along with the tools of NLP, and his work just really exploded into the world. And now we know him as, owner of like 20 plus companies, $5 billion in sales that they do. And just has taken his life from shit to magic. By the way, speaking of shit, shout out to Todd Goodrich for making this shirt for me. You can hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up faster. It's an old story that I have. My college football coach, one day I'm having a really bad practice. I'm a wide receiver, so my job is to catch footballs. But that day, I'm having a bad practice and I'm dropping all these footballs, right? And he's this old school coach. He played football back in the day when they had leather helmets. And so he's very old school, and he doesn't remember everybody's names because he's so old. And he doesn't really care to, so he calls everybody by their number. So my number was 21. He called me, "Hey, 21, are you going to drop footballs like that on the game on Saturday?" And I looked at him and I said, "Shit, coach, I hope not." And he said, "Well, George," he said, "Hey, 21, you can hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up faster." And so that became kind of like this life principle, that came from like the straight up rawness of this old man. And it's always stuck with me. So Todd Goodrich, when I shared that story at the recent Greatest Year of Your Life event, Todd Goodrich made a quick shirt during those 3 days, at some point during those 3 days, and brought it to me. So shout out to Todd Goodrich. You can hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up faster. And essentially all that means is that hope can get you started. But when it comes to like getting shit done, hope is only going to get you so far. You got to strategize. You got to take action. You got to do a whole bunch of shit to actually make it work. And NLP is one of those tools, and NLP Timeline, as we're talking about here, is one of those tools that you can utilize in your day-to-day routine to hack your mindset, because our mind will take us off in crazy tangents if we let it. It's like this puppy. It just wants to wander off everywhere. And if we don't wrangle it in, and direct it, then it can take us in places and we end up thinking, well, how the hell did I end up here? So anyway, transform the past and unlimit your future. Learn the 3 ways that your brain is programmed. Let's jump in. Number 1 way that your brain is programmed that we've already talked about is immersion. And that's simply being immersed in your family dynamic that you were born into, being immersed in the sort of the community that and the peers, your friends, your friends' parents, your teachers, your coaches, sort of their model of the world. As we were just swimming in it, we are when we're born, think of us kind of like a blank slate, in that we absorb the programming, we absorb the patterns of belief, the patterns of emotion, the patterns of energy, the patterns of behavior of the world around us. And so, whatever environment or community that we're born into, we simply by osmosis, by being immersed in that, will adopt the dominant programming and beliefs of the people consistently around us. And so our parents, as well-meaning as they were, most of them didn't know the impact that they could have on a kid's psyche. My parents didn't know. My parents had no idea of what human potential was and what we were capable of. So they couldn't teach it to me. Fortunately, through some painful life experiences, I was sort of forced to seek answers. But immersion is one of those ways that we're programmed, simply by being immersed in our family, simply by being immersed in our communities, right, in our culture that we live in. So that's one way that we're programmed. The second way that we're programmed is through intense emotional experiences. As I was mentioning earlier, we've all had some traumatic experience. For example, when I was 5 years old, I was walking along this fence and I hit this bush, and this bush must have had some beehive in it or something, because I started getting attacked by bees. And it was painful. I crumbled to the ground crying, and my neighbor Gail hears me, and she comes running out and she grabs me and she takes me back inside and bandages me up and puts ointment on me or whatever and soothes the pain. And after a while I'm fine. But during that time when I was being stung by bees, my brain thought I was potentially going to die. And so it developed a belief, a program that said bees are dangerous. Simple, right? You get stung by a bunch of bees, the brain's got to develop a belief about what just happened. to try to protect you from it again in the future. And so as I move forward in my life, I remember having these crazy reactions to bees. Anytime a bee or a wasp or even a fly or a mosquito got too close and I can hear that buzzing sound, anything that my brain associated to that bee sting incident, any sound associated to it, any visual associated to it, is going to trigger a red flag and trigger the belief that says, "Hey, bees are dangerous, potential danger, potential death." And this is, our number one priority of our brain is survival and safety. And so, I would have these crazy reactions. I'd be swatting at flies, and like my life was, going to end, which my brain on some level thought it was. And so I'd be swatting bees away. And for my entire life, I would just have this phobic response to bees. And then in 2008, when I did my NLP certification training, on day 3, they teach you a process called VK disassociation, also known as fast phobia cure. It's basically how to eliminate lifelong phobias in a very short period of time. It is an absolute gangster process. And so you learn that at the NLP certification training. There's one that I'm partnered with Dr. Heidi with, of the Worldwide Institutes of NLP, and she comes to Colorado every single summer, and I book her to facilitate a full-on internationally recognized 7-day NLP certification training. And this year it's July 10th through the 16th. But on day 3, I learned this fast phobia cure, this VK disassociation process. And when I had the process ran on me with the bee phobia, I felt a little shift, nothing significant. But then after the training was over and I went out and I was living my life after that training, I remember I was walking through Westminster, Boulder, Colorado area during one summertime, and I was hiking on this trail. And on this trail, I see these patch of sunflowers off to my left. And as I see the patch of sunflowers, I noticed that inside of the sunflowers, there's probably like 4 or 5 bees right there, just zzz, And so I walk by it, and it's probably a few feet away. And I walk by it, and I just keep, look forward and keep walking. I didn't even think anything of it, no response. But I realized as I took a few more steps that something was off, that there was these little things that I've been frightened of my entire life that had no longer had any impact on me emotionally. There was no trigger. So I looked back at the bees, and I thought back to my NLP training. I was like, holy shit, it worked. And it was crazy. And that's when I really became a believer in NLP after that, because there was no doubt in my mind that response that was gone was a result of the work that we had did a few months prior. So that's the traumatic experience, that example that I want to share with you. And you may have had other traumatic experiences in the past. Some people go through some really crazy shit, like they get raped or physically abused, sexually abused. I mean, there's all kinds of trauma that people go through. And when we have, intense emotional experiences, traumatic experiences, as we're looking at bullet point number 2 here, check number 2 is discover how intense emotional experiences locks in trauma. The intensity emotionally of that experiences forces the brain to come up with a meaning to protect itself. And so another example of this is that when let's say you are physically abused or sexually abused by the opposite sex and you're a female. And so you might develop a belief in there that says men are dangerous. Just from being abused once. If it happens multiple times, that repetition is the third way our brains are programmed, is through the power of repetition. But even if it just happens once, if it happens multiple times, it's definitely going to be programmed in. But that's all it takes, to have one intense emotional experience for the brain to develop a defense belief to keep you safe from whatever just happened. That's the brain's job, is to keep you alive. And so you might, as a man or as a woman, develop a belief about men that say men are dangerous. Men hurt you. And women will go their entire life not knowing that this belief is lodged into their unconscious and protecting them. And they wonder why they can't seem to find a relationship that they truly desire in their heart. Because in their mind, if they believe that men are dangerous or men are going to hurt them, they're going to push away any potential of a relationship. And if they do allow one in, they allow that belief to attract a man that is dangerous or attract a man that is going to hurt them. And so it's these deep traumatic sort of programs that get installed, that timeline can be very powerful for. So that's how intense emotional experiences locks in trauma. How to learn and use the power of NLP timeline to release stuck emotion from past trauma. I'm going to give you an example of it, and you'll see. So at our recent event, I'm going to come out of here for a second. Give me 1 second. So at our recent share, new share. So at our recent NLP or not NLP, our recent Greatest Year of Your Life event, on day 2 of that event, I always bring somebody up on stage after I'm sharing what timeline is and how powerful it is. I bring somebody on stage to, let me see, to demonstrate the process. And so I don't know if you can read this or not, but I'm going to read it to you. But basically, at our recent 3-day event, there's this woman. Her name is Jody Amend, and she came to the event, and she had this huge fear of public speaking. Like, she runs her own mortgage business, and she knows she wants to do more speaking to help reach more people and grow her revenues. But she said in this email, I'll get to this email in a second. At the event, I could tell she was trembling. I mean, I could just tell in somebody's body when they're ready for a big shift and a big breakthrough. And so she was just trembling. She was crying. And so she came on stage and she started talking to us about, that she has this big fear of public speaking, and that, something happened in her past that was creating this anxiety and this fear. And so we did this NLP process, this timeline process, where I took her back to that point in time where the traumatic experience was programmed. And then we went back because it was one of her teachers that basically told her she was incompetent, or she wasn't smart, or she wasn't doing it right. And that's the memory that came up from doing the process. And so as we did some NLP work on that memory, and this is the power of NLP timeline, is that you can go back and change the energetic and emotional composition of a past memory. Because when I was 5 years old, I didn't have the mental resourcefulness to come up with a belief or a perspective about bees that wouldn't have me be afraid of them. I was only 5 years old. So I didn't have all the experience, the 38 years that I have now, to where if I got stung with a bee now, I can look back and I say, well, based on what I now know about bees over 38 years, they're not dangerous. In fact, that bee just died because it stung me. That sucks. You know what I'm saying? And so, that's kind of the thing that NLP timeline is so powerful with. You can go back to past memories and change the energetic and emotional resonance or composition of them so that they have a different impact on you. And that whatever belief was installed during that memory can be undone. And this is what happened with Jody. We went back to that memory and we did a few different NLP tools within this timeline process. And it was crazy to see what happened. Not only did she have these huge emotional breakthroughs, not only did she have this greater level of understanding of what happened in that memory of her in 8th grade that installed the belief that was installed. I sent a video out on it, but the belief was something about she, what was it? It's like she didn't deserve, no, she didn't have anything important to say. That's what the belief that was installed from that interaction with her teacher. And then so 10 days later, she does a video and she's talking about how she's just feeling more confident in her meetings. And then I asked her recently, I said, hey, can you give us a quick update on, what's going on with you since now this has been, let me see, January 13th, February, March. So this is almost 2 months later. And so here's the email that she sent me. She said, I had been, let's see, I'm just going to read this part. I had been actively trying to shift this on my own for over 4 years with very little change. And she was feeling desperate that morning that she came up to the stage. And that's what I'm looking for, desperation. When somebody's ready to change and they're desperate, they have leverage to change. It means like they're done with this shit and they're ready to move forward. So I can tell in her energy, she was committed to move forward and go beyond that. She said, I think that's why I was so emotional. It's weird watching that video, the one that I sent out. She tried essential oils, amino acids, tapping, visualization, Xanax even. She went to prescription drugs to try to tame this fear of public speaking. over the last 4 years. And her intention was to shift her fear around public speaking, she says. But what I realized is that the shift was an overall shift in my self-confidence. So not only did we just totally eliminate the fear of public speaking, but we inserted and added this I'm a badass self-confidence, which if you watch the whole video that I'll send out to you at some point in the next couple of weeks, you can watch the entire facilitation of it. It's like 26 minutes. We installed the belief I'm a badass, and that's the confidence that she's feeling. So let's see. I've looked at different areas in my life that I feel this has impacted. Not only do I have a lot more confidence when I've had to speak in public, but it's a lot easier for me to convey messages clearly. I also have noticed that it has been easier to find difficult conversations, or has been easier to have difficult conversations with people. In the past, I would avoid these types of conversations at all costs. I do a lot of video content for my business, and I feel my videos have shifted from wanting people to like and know me to providing value. That's a big shift. Because if you're doing videos from I need people to like me, like you're not being authentic, you're not being real, you're being bullshit. You're being bullshit you. So so she shifted from that to then shifting into providing more value. She went on to say, I'm also having an easier time asking for the things that I want and need from people. I think it all comes back to self-confidence and feeling that I'm also important, intelligent, and deserving. And remember, that was the belief we shifted, that she didn't have anything important to say, and we shifted it. And I don't want to use the word reprogrammed her, because it sounds like she's kind of a computer, but we are sort of like bio-computers, when we break it down. But that's the work of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. How do we communicate with the unconscious mind to change patterns? And this is what we worked on with Jody. And she sends me this email. So she really looks forward to diving deeper into NLP. And she said, I'm so grateful for you, George. And this is why I do this work, because we sometimes have this belief that change needs to happen and it takes a long time. It really doesn't. It doesn't. What determines how quickly one is ready to change is based upon how ready they are to change, how willing they are, and how much leverage they have. Meaning, has it produced so much pain that they've gotten to the point where they're like, fuck this, I'm totally done with this, I don't care what it takes. And those are the people that tend to find me. They've tried a bunch of things and they get to the point where like, I'm just fucking done with this. This is over. Like, this is done. We need to do something. And then this NLP work just catapults them away from all those limits and into a limitless future. So that's kind of the update with, let me just switch my screen here 1 second, please. How do I do this here? Come here. New share. All right, so we'll go back to this. So that's the update with Jody, which I mean is so phenomenal because this one. Which is so phenomenal. I mean, because it shows that whatever for those of you who are watching this live or watching the recording, like if there's something that's like just sticking you and it's just kicking your ass and you're at that point where like, I'm fucking done with this. Like, it doesn't have to take years. It can take a short period of time, depending on how ready you are. And that's the power of timeline. So when I learned this NLP process in my 7-day certification training with Dr. Heidi, it helped me understand that, hey, I have the ability to go back into time to memories that produce traumatic experiences, which they live in our unconscious. And learning this process helps you identify and uncover and bring to the surface those memories that were traumatic, because sometimes we'll try to put them away in a closet so that we don't have to deal with them. But that closet in our unconscious mind, those programs are still running even if they're in the closet. So this work allows us to go inside the damn closet and say, hey, you're in here and we're going to change some shit. So just a great example for Jody of her courage and her vulnerability on stage and going through that process. I'm going to send you the entire footage for all 26 minutes, and you can study it and see what we did, and also you can see how we installed this belief of I'm a badass along the way. It's pretty gangster. So if you decide to take the 7-day NLP training, this is only one of the many, many tools that you'll learn in this huge ass binder that you'll get, which is over there. I'm not going to get it now, but a huge ass binder just full of exercises and mindset hacks that you can use to cut away bullshit. to unlimit yourself, unlimit your future. All right. So essentially, timeline, and I've been kind of offering some examples of it because that's one way that we learn is through kind of imagining the example. Timeline works by you, number one, uncovering traumatic beliefs or experiences that created traumatic beliefs, and then going back from a wiser version of you, from the current version of you that you are now. Because if trauma happened to you when you were 7 years old, you only had 7 years to try to find the most resourceful belief you could about what just happened to try to keep you safe and alive. And in most cases, it's a defense belief that got created. And that defense belief is keeping you away from a whole bunch of good shit. And sure, it's protecting you and keeping you away from some of the bad stuff that happened. But I promise you, it's at this point, it's limiting you more than it's serving you. And by going and uncovering whatever that past memory was, and then from this wiser version of you that now has 30, 40, 50, 60 years of experience in life, you go back from this wiser, more compassionate, more understanding and aware version of you, and you literally can, and it's called perceptual positions, but you literally can float into other people's perspectives and points of view, which is what we did with Jody when you watch the video, and get a sense of what's going on in their world to have treated somebody or said something that hurtful to somebody in that way. Because one thing that I learned along the way that it's always stuck with me is that hurt people hurt people. That anybody who delivers any kind of pain or hurts anybody in somewhere in their world, they're hurting. And there's a level of understanding that we can gain if we simply take our current wisdom and go back into the perspective of those people. Not only that, what resources did that younger version of us need? What resources did that younger version of us need? So by going back into time through the step-by-step process that you learn, you can literally install resourceful values, resourceful beliefs, just like we did with Jody with the I'm a badass. And you'll see how we did it. It was pretty amazing. But that's the key. And then what you do is then after you've gained deeper understanding of the person or whatever happened in the past, gain deeper understanding and forgiveness for it. Not only does that free you, but then you can go into your own perspective and plant resources and install resources that you just simply didn't have access to at that time. Now, one presupposition, and a presupposition is just a big word for like a principle. NLP has quite a few presuppositions or principles that hold the body of work of NLP together. And one principle or presupposition is that we do the best we can with the resources we have available at any given time. So when we were 7 years old and trauma happened, we did the best we could with the resources we had at that time. And sometimes that younger version of us didn't understand. They think that there's something wrong with them if they get abused or if they get hurt by somebody. They think, well, I must be a bad person in order for somebody to do something bad to me like that. And so we can't help, for the most part, especially in our young developing minds, to take something like that, to take trauma like that personally, like, oh, so this is somehow my fault. And by taking the guilt and by taking the blame and the shame out of that younger perspective, that younger version of you, and then installing new resourceful beliefs in there. And then the next step in that process is you move that person or you move you forward with these new resources versus the old ones and have you grow up in time using this timeline transformation exercise, move you forward in time to where in your imagination, that younger version of you grew up without the traumatic emotional programming that came from it, and you go through time without it. Because remember, like, our past only exists in our imagination, and we can rework the memory. We can redo the memory almost like a take two in a movie where it's like, cut, that's not going to work. Let's do it again. Let's do it this way. And so you do a take two action, you go in and you do the NLP magic and you move this person forward now with the new resources they didn't have access to at the time. They grow up unconsciously in their imagination without those resources. And now they can move forward in their life, just like Jody. They can move forward in their life without those old traumatic baggage, And that's the power of NLP Timeline. And there are so many ways to use NLP Timeline. Let me check in to see how time is it. Okay, so we're about there. another exercise that I want to give you before we wrap up here is clearing anxiety of a future event. So when I have speaking engagements, especially big ones where there's big opportunities, I tend to get a little anxious. I tend to get from a reframing standpoint, there's no difference between anxiety and excitement, right? It's how we frame it. But one exercise you can do that in NLP called clearing a future event is you can literally go into the future. What's up, Linda Ray?
Hi, George.
Thanks for joining us, sister. Sorry if I got your dogs all wild up. I'm going to mute you though. So if what I want to invite you guys to do is think about a future event that you have coming up. Think about a future event that maybe is important to you. Maybe it's a potential client meeting. Maybe it's a client meeting that you have, or a coaching call that you have with somebody, or a speaking engagement. Think of a meeting that you have coming up that's got you riled up a little bit. That has you feeling a little bit anxious about it. And you can do this later too. So the other day, when was this? Yesterday? No, Wednesday. I was in Phoenix doing a presentation, and the printer at the hotel I was staying at was out of order. It's not working. And so I had to very quickly, before I went to the venue, I had to go to a FedEx office and print my printouts. And there was kind of a lot to do in a short period of time. And so I remember feeling anxious. And I actually did my Facebook Live that I do on my business page. And I taught this same exercise. And I was anxious, and I wanted to relieve the anxiety because it doesn't allow me to be fully present. And you know what I'm talking about. So what I did was I used this timeline exercise. I went into the future right after the successful completion of the event. And so I'm walking you through this process through my example. So I was feeling the anxiety in the moment. The presentation was 2 hours into the future. So in my mind, I went 3 hours into the future, and I imagined the successful completion of that event. I was shaking hands with board members, high-fiving, the people in the audience, giving hugs, just feeling the vibe, feeling the energy of the room. And I was painting the picture of a successfully completed presentation. And the more I imagined it, the more I shook hands and high-fived and hugged people and was receiving in my mind the positive feedback that I got from how this helped them. Once I started imagining that, the anxiety in my belly went away. And that's all you have to do with this process is if you have a speaking engagement coming up or you have an important meeting coming up, go into the future in your imagination, just beyond the successful completion of that event or that meeting. See it, visualize it as complete, and make it as real as possible in your mind, in your imagination, and notice what happens to the anxiety. And so in like 4.5 minutes, I did that video, and immediately, if you watch that video, it's actually on my personal page now and on my business page. But if you watch that video, like I talk you through it about how it just kind of relieved that anxiety. And I went and just destroyed that presentation. So this is one of my, my hacks that I use anytime that I have this fear of public speaking, that I give my brain the data that it needs to say, okay, this is what we're moving toward. Because remember, anxiety is just using what if in a negative way. Well, what if it doesn't go well? What if I bomb? What if this happens? What if that happens? And we what if ourselves into this anxiety and this panic attack. What if I don't get my papers printed in time? What if I can't even get there on time? What if my Uber driver is slow, or whatever it is? And I use Lyft. Actually, I don't use Uber. It just, for some reason, I just use Lyft. It's easier. Anyway, we went and got the things printed, headed over to the venue, got there in plenty of time to prep, and ended up just destroying it. We did have some audio technical issues at the beginning that I had to just take off my mic and speak louder, which wasn't a big deal. But I destroyed it. I just crushed it. So that's the key. That's the tool is, number one, think of a future event, important event that you have coming up that, maybe you got some anxiety around. Number two, go into the future. just after the successful completion event. And in your mind, just paint the picture of a successful completion. I did this a long time ago when I was doing interviews, when I was still working for a pharmaceutical company in 2006, 2007. In the interview process, all 4 interviews that I had, I went into the future and I shook hands and I visualized that, I was being hired, and I got hired. And then I just got sick of working for people. So I started my own thing. But any meeting that you have or any event coming up that you have in the future that you got anxiety around, use this timeline pattern. And timeline can be its own certification course. It's that badass. This is one of my favorite NLP tools. And the ways that are possible to utilize timeline to change shit magically in your world, it's just it really is that it's ninja work, it's magic work. So that step-by-step process to transform pain, past pain into power and potential. I'm going to send you the video of the entire process that I ran with Jody. All right, so you can see it done step by step, and then you have the other step by step, clearing the anxiety of a future event. Right, think of an event you have, go into the future, just minutes or an hour into the future after the successful completion, paint that picture vividly, right? And then do what we call future pace, which means now take that energy into your future and imagine 1 month in the past, 2 months, or 1 month in the future, 2 months in the future, and we future pace that energy so that it starts to duplicate in your future as well. So that's it, guys. I'm going to stop right there. Any questions? Any questions? All right, let's see. We got something in the chat here. BRB. I think that's been there for a while. Any questions? I know Amelia and Linda, you joined us a little bit late, so you'll be able to watch this on the recording. But any questions or, oh, look at that guy. Yes, that's a big fella right there. That's what my sons would say. Look at that big guy. Because when Callan, he's 3 years old and he picks his nose all the time now. And when he picks his nose, I say, oh, look at that big guy, Dada. So anyway, any final questions before we wrap up? All right. Was this useful? Yeah, if it was helpful, I'd love to see your comments here. Mandy says, I love the timeline concept. I've been doing that without awareness. It was a thing. How you use this in the moment? How do you use this in the moment? Well, I don't really understand the question. If you mean like, because you do use it in the moment, but for a future event. If you're in the future event, you can, go to the bathroom, and if you can, step away. But if you're in the situation, I would say the answer to this is yes, with practice. Like if you get really good at going, okay, I feel anxiety. Let me close my eyes real quick or whatever. Let me just boom. Okay, let me move that. Okay, and go. I can say you do it in the moment depending on how long your meeting is. You can pull it off quick, but it does take a little bit of practice. And the thing is that the more I know some of you are already going to the NLP certification training, and the more you use this stuff, the more your brain recognizes the pattern, like how you use your brain. It's like Facebook. Facebook will read your behavior, your like behavior, your comment behavior, and based on that algorithm, it will bring more information or more content like it to you. Same with your brain, in that the more you use these tools, the more it'll recognize what you're doing with this NLP stuff, and it will become faster. It will the shortcuts will become quicker because your brain will recognize the pattern of what you're doing. And so this is why I love this work so much. Joshua, where can I find a step-by-step guide how to do timeline on myself? That's a good question. Step-by-step guide. I do a 2-day training, actually, that's coming up March 23rd and 24th, and I'm going to be teaching a step-by-step NLP. Let me see, maybe I can just post a link here. Joshua, have we met before? Can you tell me your last name? Because I teach a 2-day NLP training, March 23rd and 24th in Denver, Colorado. Hey, Joshua. I think it's Bevan is how you pronounce your last name. I know we've been connected on social media for a while. Thanks for joining us. In fact, I think I got your email recently too. You broke my Zoom call. Thanks, man. But I would say if you can make it to my 2-day NLP training, we'll definitely be spending a few hours on NLP timeline, just that process alone. The link I just shared with you. If you can make it to, let's see here. We'll find you a resource. NLP. If you're interested in diving deeper and going faster, then here's the 7-day certification training link to learn more. But if you're just looking for just like a one pager where you can use NLP timeline, I would just Google it. I'm sure something is out there that's going to give you a step-by-step how-to of it. The thing with NLP is that it's so experiential that it's useful just to have the step-by-step process and to do it on yourself, and you can do it. But it definitely is strengthened faster and deeper when you're practicing it with other people, which is why NLP trainings, the most effective ones, are in-person trainings. But anyway, long answer to your question is Google it. You can Google it. I'm sure there's something out there outside of these trainings. Good questions. Any last questions before I wrap up, guys? Okay. All right. So our next call, the only way these calls get rescheduled is if I get booked for a speaking engagement in place of that time. So that's the only thing that has higher priority over me doing these sessions. Otherwise, I'm going to be doing them. So the first Wednesday of each month, the next one is March 3rd. As of now, I don't have any speaking engagements. I have a meeting coming up. Okay. Got to go soon. I don't have any speaking engagements come April 3rd, but sometimes things happen fast. So just keep an eye out for your emails. And again, if you enjoyed this session here, if you enjoy what we're doing here, please invite your friends. It's totally free. Hopefully you're getting a lot of value from it. I appreciate you too, Mandy. And if you know anybody, who could use stuff like this, just send them to it's nobsmind.com, nobsmind.com. Very simple. I can plug that into no BS. And the thing is that you just have to opt in once and you get access to all of our stuff. And we're still working on a podcast and a couple of other things, but these monthly webinars are set and ready to go. So where the hell are you guys? Okay. So nobsmind.com is where you want to send them to. And then last couple of resources I wanted to share with you before we wrap up here is, so if you want to dive deeper, here's a great free resource that you can have from our partners at the Worldwide Institutes of NLP. It's a free ebook that you can get called 156 Ways Learning NLP Will Improve Your Life. Just go to nlpworldwide.com/YMLNLP. You must learn NLP. And then that's a great resource for those of you wanting to learn a little bit more. And then also, I'm doing NLP coaching calls, free NLP coaching calls. This is something that hit me recently. I was on one of my runs in the forest, and I'm always looking for insights and ahas. And so something hit me, because I talk a lot about NLP and its power, its weird potency. But there's a lot of people that just need the experience of it. So I said, okay, I'm going to do some free NLP coaching sessions for a limited time. And if you're interested in doing that, go to nlpcall.com and fill out our quick questionnaire, and we will get you scheduled. All right, guys. Well, I think that's it. Let me see. Let me go back, see if there are any questions. Nope. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate it. See you next month. And keep an eye out for your email, because I'm going to be sending you the full video of the timeline process I did with Jody. And also that's where I'll keep you updated on next topics for next month's webinar. All right, guys. Stay awesome. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.